Hi, Firefly community. Welcome again to another episode of Catching Up for Coffee with Awesome People. I have another awesome person with me this morning, and of course my coffee. So without further ado, let me introduce a unique experience that we've got this morning for all the volunteer community as well, because we've got what I like to call a double header. Ralph Mayhew, who is the Minister for the Burleigh Village Uniting Church.
Yep.
And also the P&C President for Burleigh Heads State School.
Yep.
So Ralph has joined the platform twice, which is fantastic. So Ralph, thanks for being here. Thanks for having a coffee with me. So tell the community, let's have a listen to some of the good that you've been doing in both of those entities, or one, or whatever.
So I guess the school comes out of the church. So we set up a church in Burleigh some years ago, and we went, where's the heart of the community? Used to be the church, but now it's the school.
Right.
And so we just lent our services to the school. So how can we help? And one thing led to another, and they said, would you be president of the P&C? And so that was 6 or 7 years ago, I don't know.
There you go.
And so that's P&C work is awesome because it's doing the same work I do in the church.
Right.
It's managing volunteers, it's bringing forward initiatives, it's fundraising, it's helping people get on board with a vision, helping people belong. And so the two work really well in parallel. But I volunteer as president of the P&C, and then my paid work is full time with the church.
Yeah, sure.
And so we do a bunch of things in the community. We're just starting up an op shop, which is really exciting. We try and we do a program or support a program that feeds homeless,
right?
Which is great. Happens a couple of nights a week. Run a play group, run a seniors friendship group, a variety of other things in that space.
Sure.
And then our goal at the school is to do everything we can to enrich the students' experience at the school.
Yeah.
So whether that's their well-being, whether that's tech in the classroom, whether it's supportive teachers, whether it's new programs that come out, whether it's air conditioning or fix up the hall. So a lot of the focus of that is fundraising, but it's fundraising with the purpose of, well, how do we continue to benefit the culture of the school and complement the culture of the school, which has been really exciting.
Yeah.
So it's a good challenge and I love it.
Well, we're now just hearing about all that, man. There's so many things going on. It's great. So just pulling those apart for a minute, so that you used to be that the life of the community was the church.
Yep.
And now it's transitioned over to the school. Are they a parallel audience for you as well? Like members at the church are members of school?
There's a little bit. So I think when I say church used to be the heart of the community, that was maybe 50, 100 years ago, right?
Yeah, right.
So where people look to the church for hope, and then since then our culture has changed quite dramatically. So people, I find, that have students in the school and part of the school, they kind of relocate their hope to, well, how my kids looked after and how do they thrive. And so as a church we go, well, how do we connect with that? So there are a few parents. There's a number of parents I'm really good mates with in the school, which has been awesome. And then a few people from the school that come to the church. Yeah. It's kind of an overlap. We'd love to see increase, but not one that kind of tethers the two to each other.
Yeah.
But we've been recently looking at how can we, as a church, push more volunteers into the school.
Right.
So things like Brekkie Club, things like we just did a working bee at the school, helping out with barbecues, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
All right, how do we take people who we're willing to serve in the community, and part of the church is an expression of their faith, and pushing them into the school, which has been really welcome on both sides.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, obviously from our position, we're fortunate that we get to meet thousands of awesome people like yourself. That are intrinsically, wrapped up in their passion and their cause, which is great. But we look at the market at the moment, just some numbers. We have 270,000 not-for-profit organisations, 80,000 grassroots sporting, 60-odd thousand charities, and that's all, our church fits into some in the charity mode and some in the service provision mode as a not-for-profit as well. But we find that there is so much, siloing of everyone's cause that we don't see enough collaboration. I mean, we've been big advocates of trying to get orgs. I was talking to guys in mental health the other day. There's 13,000 service providers in the charity sector now that are all dealing with different segments.
Amazing.
But then when it comes to funding and fundraising, and you'd know from your experience at school, so talk us through some of the the ideologies, in relation to the difference between fundraising for school and fundraising for church.
Yeah, I guess the fundraising stuff, fundraising for church, what we're doing is inviting people to give to a mission they believe in.
Right.
I guess that's ultimately what fundraising is. And so we say to people at church, so like it's generosity is the key core of your faith. You see the generosity of God. What does that generosity look like? And then having things. So we recently did a program where we invited people to fundraise, give to our op shop, the establishment of it, and that was all about. We actually don't want an op shop that sells great bargains and makes a ton of money for your church. We actually want an op shop that's a channel to connect with people, and to bless them, and to love them, and to help them, and to serve them. So pushing people's focus and thinking through that in terms of fundraising has been really effective. People going, I want to be part of that. I really don't care too much about creating a business that supports the church. I really want to see people's lives changed at the end of the road. And then with the school, it's interesting because the church, you have sort of like levels of orbit of people that will give. So you have your key contributors, but then it ripples out. In a school, it's quite defined, because you've got parents of the school and local businesses, and that's pretty much it. So we do, in the school setting, spend a lot of time with connecting with local businesses as well as with parents in the school. But this careful balance of you don't want to ask too much of people. There's limited resources that people have in that space. So working out creative ways for people to enjoy what it means to give and to contribute to that. And what we found, some people go, well, I'm really financially in a good position. I'm time poor, so have this financial gift. And we have other people in the opposite thing. And so what we say is like anything you can give is wonderful. Whether that's an hour serving here, or whether it's some donated goods here, or whether it's some money for a prize here, that's amazing. And we found just creating an open opportunity for people to serve and give how it suits them and their lifestyle at the moment. Has been really effective.
That's interesting as well. I sit on some steering committees and a lot of councils in that space, and we talk about how volunteering has changed. Like when I grew up in the country, we didn't have the word volunteering. It was something on at the club. You needed help. Everyone came to help. So we get these terms, and obviously, we're a term-centric society now. Everything's got a label. Everything's got a brand. You fit into this section or that section. But it's interesting when you talk about the organisations that struggle to find the flexibility in volunteers. We need a defined number of volunteers at this particular point in time, and they go, well, I'm not available then. So how do you try and advocate about when it suits you, it's great for us, and how do we fit that into the agenda?
We found a few things. One is giving people enough notice. So we've been caught out a few times when people said, I just didn't know it was on. Could have helped, could have arranged things if we knew it was on. So that's helpful. I think giving people options about how to, so whether they do a full sort of shift, if you like, or they do an hour here and come back. Usually in the school, it's connected to their kids. So if we have a disco, it's a junior and a senior disco. It's rare that we have a junior parent help at the senior disco. But that's cool. We just need them to help out in the junior disco. But since I'm involved in a local footy club too, and we've had the same.
You're not a president of the footy club?
No. I
for all those out there that are thinking about asking Ralph to be president, no, he's not interested.
No. It's a fluke that it works at the school. And so we were just talking about the other day that they were saying they've had to restructure the way they look at volunteers, because what they used to do is go, hey, we've got this barbie on, or we've got the canteen that needs to be done, or they come and turn up, and no one would turn up. It was the same, like 2 or 3 people, and it was burning those people out. And so what they've done now is they get a couple of teams on every given day, and they say, can you source us these 10 volunteers, and just for an hour. And so you have people go, well, my kid's coming, I'll come an hour early, or I'll stay an hour late. And it actually strategically allows people to go, I can fit that in. Whereas before, they wouldn't even entertain it. They'd be like, I don't want to help out. Like, I'll do enough. Somebody else can do it. But when you empower people, I think, connected to their passions and their links and engagement, it really helps people.
It's good. I'm fortunate enough to spend a bit of time with Jen, who's the CEO of Currumbin Lifestyle Sanctuary, and she has a really good ethos down there. She has paid employees and unpaid employees. She doesn't have any volunteers. Mind you, she has 330 odd volunteers or whatever it is. But the concept of, and from a recruitment point of view, and we've done this at churches, so often I think organisationally we say, oh, we need some volunteers, when you don't, really.
No.
You know, like I said to our church, we were having some difficulties as different volunteers come in, they bring their skill sets and their nuances. So we finished up where we had like 18 different databases.
Yeah.
And then you go, where is all this information? So instead of getting a volunteer to help with that, I just said to the church, I said, why don't we just ask our congregation for who has the expertise? That we're looking for someone for potentially an hour to help us ratify all that. And all the hands that went up because of all these people that work on databases every day.
Yeah.
It wasn't a concept now of, oh, am I signing up like forever as a volunteer?
That's right.
You know, it's we have lots of stories about the president that's been there 9 years and now taking out ads in the paper going, wants a new president for the footy club. Do you know what I mean? So there's some of those things. We're really interested in the dynamic of the P&C. Being a parent now, unfortunately, you know, thank you Lord that all my kids have finished school.
Well done.
So I don't have that whole trip back and forth. But being on the P&C myself, you know, one of the things it was almost like it was one of the first places we looked, because both Courtney, our CEO and co-founder as well, and we as kids have been through that school process. We went, surely there has to be a better way for us to raise funds than selling chocolate.
Yep. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And it's like, so then we actually drilled into that. And no offense to all those Cadbury employees and directors out there, but hey, listen, when you advertise on TV, support your volunteers, but you don't do anything except put a little label on a block of chocolate, we think you can do better. And then when you have these opportunities for fundraising, when, you know, the school gets a proportion of that, but that's a huge economy for them. So what are some of the things that you guys look at and have experimented with outside selling sugar?
It's a good question.
Because we finished up buying about 8 boxes of caramel koalas one time, because I think it was Harmony who said, oh, I want to win the first prize.
So we don't do that anymore. We don't sell chocolate. We canned it a long time ago. Because one of the problems or challenges with it is because the percentage of what you get is so small. And I get that it has to be small for businesses to work. But let's say every kid, so you get $5 from a box of chocolates, and every kid in the school, there's 500 kids in the school, they sell it. So you end up with $2,500. But you're also in conversation constantly with parents saying you shouldn't send sugar home, you shouldn't do this. So there's a whole bunch of health awareness stuff now. And you've actually got a really small proportion that comes back to the school for all the work, because then you have to handle the cash that comes in, you have to handle the chocolates that go out, you have to manage, and where's that gone, you have to make all these phone calls. And so people just went, it's too labour intensive on a couple of people. So what we try and do is go, how do we do fundraising that involves a larger group of people that can come and go and ebb and flow? So one of the most successful things we run is a colour explosion run. And the incredible thing about this, so kids go and fundraise. About 5 or 6 weeks and go knock on the neighbours' doors and drive their parents and family crazy, right? And then they turn up on the day, and on the day we go, okay, if you can help out, we're going to set up from 10:30 till 1:30, and then the race is from 1:30 to 3:30. Come along, and we have crazy amounts of volunteers because they love that the kids love the colour fun run, the colour explosion run. So they go, oh, this is so good, and then they're hanging out with each other, and that's the joy of volunteering, right? Who you do it with, like, you do a sausage sizzle or jump in the cafe or squirt a kid with water, but doing it next to somebody and the fun that generates. And so what we found is we can create environments where people can do it with each other, so they're not so much sort of isolated to do a certain task. That really helps. Having deadlines, so like, all right, it's going to happen on this date. Once that date's done, you're free. Like, done. And then have essential roles and non-essential roles. So like, we really need you. So lady at the school who does an amazing job running a colour explosion run, she's essential. Like, if she didn't do it, the whole thing would fall apart. But our volunteers on the day can ebb and flow, and we can make do with a little, but we always have a ton. You can rope people in and that sort of space. And so being really clear with those who are essential of like, well, this is what we need, and how much capacity have you give it, and do you want it, and so forth. But then being much more on the opposite end to when we have a cafe and we say, turn up and say, just jump in the cafe, just priceless there, money's there, serve the kids, go nuts. And so we recognise there's some roles you can bring people in and out. So our treasurer, volunteer role at the PNC, just gold. Like, we'd be in real trouble without Gal, and very specialised in what she does. And so what we try and do is say, well, if you can do that, we'll take care of the other stuff. Because if we can take care of the other stuff, so you don't feel bad as a parent that you want to be involved in the other stuff, but it's too much of a stretch. So it's actually allowing people to operate in their skill set and their gift set, and making all the other stuff that anyone can do more accessible for everyone.
Yeah, that's terrific. So obviously, one of the reasons we're catching up, apart from the fact that you're awesome and you
bought the coffee,
and I bought your coffee. So there's a bribery factor to it as well, which is great. Obviously, the Firefly Initiative is our commonality. So tell me a little bit about that journey. How did you find the Firefly Initiative, and what was the motivation for having a look? And,
So part of my role is, I haven't told you this, but I pastor another church as well for a day a week. It gets silly.
Yeah.
But we have a couple of guys that help out with offering ministry there. And one of those guys, Sandy, I think I might have yours. And he said, have you heard about Firefly? And I'm like, no, never. As he goes, take a look, here's the website. And I looked and I went, this is crazy. That was my first, like, this is too good to be true.
Sure.
And it still is too good to be true.
There we go again. There's that comment.
There you go.
Our biggest issue. It's too good to be true.
It was just like, this is amazing. I thought, wow, we have tons of volunteers. Like in my world, whether it's at Coomera, where I look after church, whether it's at Burleigh, whether it's at the school, are going volunteers that give out of the goodness of their heart. They don't feel like they ever need a reward.
Sure.
But what if we could reward? Because one of the challenges when you look after volunteers is, how do you say thank you?
Yeah.
Like, how do you adequately say thank you? We are so appreciative of you. We really value you.
Yeah.
When you have limited resources, you can't like throw a bunch of money at it. Like, how do you do that? So the Firefly Initiative was like, such a good fit to say to volunteers, look, as a thank you, we want to include you on the platform, and we want you to just register your hours as they come up. And when it gets to a certain tipping point, then you'll be able to access some rewards from that.
Yeah.
It's amazing. That doesn't cost the organisation anything, doesn't cost them anything. All it is a couple of,
and when you put it that way, it sounds too good to be true, right? So having now been through the process of having a look and understanding that it's a great platform, and we designed it from that perspective. Gordy and I are both long-time volunteers, and we come from a heritage of long-term volunteers.
Yep.
And you get to that point where in what are we in now? 2024. So 2021. At the start of COVID, there was reports coming out that 1 million volunteers had left the sector.
Wow.
And you take all those things into consideration. There's, economic impact, there is time, there is opportunity, there is move. We see a lot of the grassroots sporting volunteer that are there while their kids are under 16s.
Yep.
And then they transition to the next level. And then when they get to seniors, and the requirement volunteer starts to fall away. But across the board, 1 million people that were volunteering that aren't. So we thought, okay, let's have a look at that, and why is that? And it's surprising, because you think how difficult it would be to say thank you to volunteers, but it was like the number one reason why, you give your time for the right reasons because it's a good thing to do. You get a little disheartened when that's not appreciated or acknowledged, and I would argue the point for every volunteer that they don't do it for accolade. Or from a pride point of view, but acknowledgement is great, thanks, it's a good job. And then when you start to see those things change, like the pat on the back is just not cutting the mustard anymore, especially when I go, I've got out-of-pocket costs to give my time as well.
Case, right?
Yeah.
People take time off work, or it costs them to get
or
there.
Petrol money to do this, or, all those things that are associated with volunteering. But so we looked at it and went, what is it that needs to happen? And the first thing was, for us, it was easy. It was just to say, all the corporates and the local businesses that want to help support volunteering, but it's difficult. They either sponsor this event, or they donate to this school or to the church or whatever it is, and that's the exhaustion of their marketing budget. Society, and especially in that economic area now as well, that every dollar that a small business has to put out has an expectation of, yes, I'm doing good with that, but it would be nice if I got some acknowledgement as well, some reciprocated business. So the small business being far more astute about who they support. The old days when the butcher had given 20 kilos of sausages to the footy club every weekend for 10 years, and he scratches his head and goes, I can't remember any of the footy club coming back to me. So we went, how do we now link those areas together? There's not a real burden on the small business, just to say thank you, whether there's a discount or a reward. And for the volunteers that are doing all that good work, we've had lots of conversations, especially, and it seems really funny because I think, from my personal perspective, my church is the best place to see good.
Yep.
And it's the worst place to try and reward them for doing that. Yep. It's like, oh, no, I don't do it because I want a reward. And we go, we'll get that. But at the end of the day, if you're going to volunteer, you're going to volunteer anyway.
Yep.
If you're going to volunteer and there is an option at the end of that you can, it's sort of, I think the whole, if our volunteers have to capture their hours and record their activity, that they are obligated to get a reward.
Yeah.
Like they're not.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's just record that because it helps the organisation.
Yeah.
So thinking through all those things, is there anything that you could recommend, even with the, your limited use, because you're a fairly newbie as well. So I've got a whole heap of things going on. Ralph's organisations is a double header and he's a newbie, and we talked about some footy clubs and stuff like that aren't on the platform yet, but we'll work on that. Anything that you've seen so far that Firefly could do to help that experience or make the journey easier for volunteers?
Yeah, I reckon there's probably the first challenge. That's not even a challenge, but the first task is for an organisation to onboard their volunteers, right? Get them on the platform, because until they get on the platform, you don't know them. You don't even know they exist.
Sure.
So I think that's on organisations to do, to encourage. And we've had some people say, "Oh, look, it's not for me," which I go, "I don't get it, but that's totally cool." But others that have. But once they got on the platform, there's then been a gap. They've done a bunch of volunteering and haven't registered those hours.
Sure.
And so I wonder if there's a electronic way for Firefly to connect with them in a really brief way, because we don't like tons of emails filling up our box, but it just says, hey, how'd you go volunteering this week? Have you registered your hours? Here's your link, or something like that. Or it might be this month or this couple of weeks. It's all like automated. But has a way of just jogging people's memory. Because I think that's the challenge. It's like, oh heck, Firefly sits out here when people are sort of engaged here, and so they don't put the two together.
Sure.
So I think strengthening that, it's probably on like organisers like myself to be encouraging. And saying, look, hey guys, if you want, you've got your Firefly thing, fill in your hours this week, and you. It's funny, as in organisations, you have someone that volunteers an hour a month. You have someone volunteers 10 hours a week.
Yeah.
And, I'm more concerned about the 10 hours a week and rewarding them than I am about the hour a month. It's all valuable, but in terms of what's going to make a difference for them, it's going to be the person that's giving more, because there's more chance, or there's more likelihood that they'll get a larger reward soon. Space.
Yeah, look, and we did, primarily build the structure around what we call the formal volunteer. Like yourself as the president of the PNC, you have a committee.
Yeah.
They've all put their hand up and say, I'm here for this period of time, whether that's 1 year or 3 years. Same with footy clubs, and then you have the informal. So we're structured around those that, we'd met, and like I still remember Rach that we did an interview down at Frankston Footy Club, who had done 468 hours of volunteering before the season started.
Yeah, wow.
And she just, she just had a look at herself one day and she went, you know what? This year I'm going to write down all the hours I do. And then she was like, oh no, you have 468 hours. Game hasn't started yet.
Yeah.
So we structured around that. But like you said, I mean, every hour that's contributed is important.
Yep.
So we don't, what's the word? Delineate or diversify away from the 1,000-hour volunteer to the 1 hour volunteer. Obviously on the rewards platform, it's going to take the 1 hour volunteer a bit longer to see any value. But we've got some things, and again, going back to the origination, so we built our app. It's a web-based app at the moment, for all those people that saw the newsletter last month, and certainly at the webinar, Courtney announced that our new app will be available from the 1st of July.
So good.
So we're fingers crossed we're not far away from that. What that's enabled us to do is some really nifty tech things, especially in the volunteer space, like geospacing and geocoding as well. So a volunteer that comes to the church may not necessarily do anything at the church, but because of the geospace,
give them a reminder.
In 7 days' time, they go, hey, we noticed that you were at church the other day, did you do any volunteering? Because the other thing that we can't do at the moment, email is laborious, and tracking that process with the new app with notification process. So, I'm terrible at it. I hate seeing the little red 1 on any of my apps, so I have to check what it is. So we think there's a lot that are like that as well. I've got some people that, like my wife's got 458 emails that she hasn't read, but that would drive me insane, that little thing there. So we think that that's going to be great from that sort of stimulus, that if you have registered hours and there's a time period by which you haven't, and it's outside your trend, there'll be a notification to go, hey, just to encourage you to make sure that you've registered your hours. So those little things that we've heard from the market. So it's interesting that you say the same thing. I think it's the one thing that we've got to look at.
Making it accessible too, which is what an app does.
Yeah.
Because, I'll volunteer at the school, and then I'll come, then about a week later I'll be like, should probably put that into Firefly. And by this time I've done, like, say, this shift and then an hour here and a few hours here. And so then I'm calculating in my head, and then I've got to make sure I'm in front of my laptop and I'm pulling up the page and I'm entering. Now, that process is dead easy, but there's a big gap between, I need to, like I'm waiting in the shopping line going, I should do that. If it's in my hand on my phone, it's going to happen way, it makes it so much more accessible. I think the other thing too, just to circle back, one of the huge benefits is for an organisation to see how many volunteer hours it takes to run what it does and where they go. I think that's really valuable. And as president, at some stage, I'm going to have to convince some poor sucker to do what I do. And when I started...
Some very motivated parent.
Yes. I love the role. It's so good. And when I started, somebody said to me, it's only a couple of hours a week. And then, so I did it, and I went, this feels like a bit more than a couple of hours a week. And as it went on, I used to say to people, I think it's about 10 hours a week, but I don't know. Anyway, since doing Firefly, so I started in March, and now I can track the total hours and divide it by the number of weeks, and it's 8.5 hours at the moment. That's fascinating for me to go, because I never do a set shift. So it's always bits here, and then sometimes it's at the school, sometimes it's doing work for the school and elsewhere. And so it's been really helpful to go, that's how much. So in terms of my own personal time management and understanding what I do, very helpful to go, well, there it is in black and white.
Well, look, and again, it's another one of those things that we've taken as a win. There's lots of organisation management software, which all has a fee to it. And so we looked at that, and with our question, we didn't set about building a management platform. That sort of happened organically from feedback that we got from our volunteer audience. But there's a lot of the small, the sub 10 volunteers and small organisations just can't pay for management tools. So it's great that you bring up that point, because there's lots of hours. Look, and the other thing too is we've already had organisations that have been able to use the data to help with grant applications, because they can actually show the amount of impact that they're having in the community, and if they receive these funds, they can amplify that. So it's come together pretty good.
That's great. And I think too that the whole management of it, somebody's not managing it. You guys are managing it on your side, but it's up to the volunteer. And it's like trust based. It's like, well, you just put in what you do, and so I'm not running around as a manager going, have you done your hours and you've entered them and you've entered them and you've entered them, or I need to enter them for you. It's actually this organic initiative that just takes place, and people are motivated to do it because of the rewards they get.
Yeah, sure. So I'll just toss this one out there. I don't know if you've heard or not, but we've decided that the Firefly Initiative is the world's first and only loyalty program dedicated purely to volunteers. You can't buy your way in; you have to volunteer your way in. So we like to push the envelope, and so we've got a new initiative coming up, which is the Firefly Time Auction. Again, another world first. That for the first time we will have our generous and supportive, socially responsible businesses and national brands putting product into an opportunity where volunteers can now use their hours to bid on different items.
That's cool.
Good. That's all I wanted. We'll move on from there, because that's cool. So that's all we know. But
that's creative. I love it.
But some of those things, and they will be, what we hope to see, because we get down to some of the nitty gritties, like we're talking about volunteers leaving, and if volunteers continue to leave, and we don't do the reverse of that, which is how do we actually recruit and attract, which is why, our mission statement is to elevate volunteers, and that's every one of them, doesn't matter where they are, whether that's the guy that's, all his job is to open the fence to the VIP car park at the footy, whether it's ushers and servers at church, any volunteer that contributes to the betterment of somebody else, for us, is great. They're awesome people. But one of those things is, if we don't start to address how we're recruiting the next generation, then, just the pure economics of volunteering sector, which a lot of people just take for granted. They don't really sit there and go, what would it cost if there were no volunteers?
Yeah, that's right.
And that's like a $1.3 trillion check that someone's got to write. So how are you going about with the different organisations? Obviously, with the PNC, it's a little difficult because you sort of miss that middle belt of the younger recruit. You've got parents and kids. But church-wise, and what's the position that you're taking relative to?
Yeah, we have kids volunteering at church.
Right.
So like on Sunday we have kids read the Bible, we have kids sing, we have junior leaders. So they come into our children's program and they're like your upper primary, and so they don't hold any sort of legal responsibility, but they're looking at it going, how do I serve? Rather than how do I receive? And then we have a youth ministry that as soon as you hit 18, you jump into serving and leading in that. At the same time, we're encouraging, say, 14, 15-year-olds onwards to engage in volunteering practices, whether it's like, hey, come to the school and do a working bee, or it's, we want you to tackle this certain job on a Sunday or through the week that contributes to this. The op shop will give us a ton more opportunity for more volunteers to flood in that. I look at it and go, I agree with that number. It's crazy that like 1 million volunteers left. I think previously there was an expectation of, if there's hours to be done, we can just throw it out to people and people will fill the hours. Doesn't matter what the job is, because people are keen to volunteer, and that was the case. I think now they still have the same amount of time and basically the same amount of spare time. But it's shifted to them, I think, going, well, what's worth my time? And it's not just the organisation. For some it is. For me it is. I'm like, give me any job, I don't care. But for some it's like, well, use my gifts, use my skills, use my potential, challenge me, give me something that only I can do so I can help out uniquely, so that I can belong to this thing. That's a huge thing we found with people. Like, a lot of people move interstate, and so the first thing they'll ask at the school is, well, how can I get involved? Because they want to get to know people and they want to belong. So it's more so than actually the volunteering job itself. It's like, how do I connect in that sort of space? And so we just, I guess, with our younger people and all those generations through, we just try and model it and encourage it and create opportunity and then call kids into it. And it's kind of easier with children and youth and even young adults, because they have far more time. They're like, all the things that we are constricted by, they're not. But it's avenues in. And they feel enormously valued when they're contributing, far more than we would. We'd be just like, oh, it's part of our citizen's duty or whatever. But what kids are like, oh, I get to help. And so on Wednesday, taking both my kids there, 8 and 10. Well, like every year they change the day.
They do get older every year.
So we're going up to Coomera, and I'm going to do some ministry up there in the church, but they'll help out in the op shop.
Right.
And like all day, and they love it. It's the highlight of their holiday. They're like, we just want to do that. I'm like, wow. So we have these amazing opportunities that we kind of discount kids from. So when we were at the working bee, we had kids help with the painting and help with all this stuff. There were tons of kids everywhere, and the kids, I think, parents said, can I bring my kid? I'm like, yeah, there'll be stuff for them to do. And it's shifting of saying, actually, even though they're just little people, they can actually contribute a lot. And it's not so much what they contribute, it's the heart that it develops. It's
one of those cultural things, isn't it? That, one of our other missions, in relation to that younger generation, because there's been a lot of that backsliding away from the traditions that we grew up with, traditions like respect and integrity. We're so much external noise on our younger people. So one of the things that we want to advocate strongly into that section is to create an opportunity. So with organisations like yours, to say to the kids, here is the value of giving first. Do you know what I mean? Respect yourself enough that know that when you give, you receive. you receive both the blessing of the thank you from whoever you gave to.
Yeah, absolutely.
But with the Firefly program, there is also a blessing then that someone you don't know in the community, a local business or a national brand, also says, thanks for doing it.
Yeah.
So on that, Ralph, thanks for doing it, man. It's been a joy getting to know a little bit more about what you do and how you're doing it. And we look forward to seeing lots of volunteers join on the platform and lots of redemptions coming from all of those things. And for anyone that wants Ralph to take on another position, just email me and we'll forward those applications on. Look forward to catching up again next month. Enjoy the newsletter this month and keep being awesome. Thanks, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, guys.